When you start off mixing live gigs, you're usually thrown to the dogs. Some local rich guy who owns a bar has suddenly decided that you're good enough to work for a peasant's wage for 10 hours doing what you love. Hooray! So they lock you in a basement for 10 hours and they only let you come out once you've developed permanent hearing damage. But not every live sound job is the same. Mixing in different sizes of venues comes with lots of different rewards and challenges. And if you want to make a career of being a live sound engineer, then you kind of need to know what to expect in all sorts of circumstances. I've been mixing live shows for about 10 years, and at this point I've mixed quite a lot of them. So I'm going to share my experience mixing in 3 types of venues so that you know what to expect when you reach that stage. If you are intending on building a career as a live sound engineer, then you should check out the Live Sound Career Accelerator. More on that later. But for now, let's dive in. Okay, so your first venue type is the small venue. Obviously, I alluded to this in the introduction, like the small basement. And your kind of main objective here is actually just fighting feedback, because you're probably in a small place with a low ceiling, with a sort of mediocre PA, and you don't really have the luxury of mixing per se. You're mostly just trying to get the sound audible over the drum kit, right? Or the backline in general. If you have amps and drum kits and things like that on the stage, then your main goal is almost to get the vocal above all of that. So you spend your time ringing out vocal microphones to make sure they can go as loud as possible without feeding back. And you don't really think about the tonality of the vocal microphone so much. It's mostly just, is it loud and clear? You spend a lot of time managing volume, whether that is the volume of a drummer, the volume of a guitarist, the volume of a singer who doesn't sing loud enough, the volume of all of those pieces together, the volume of the monitor speakers, which everyone wants way too loud. You spend all your time managing volume, right? This sucks because it's incredibly difficult, but this is good because you're developing chops, right? You are breaking yourself in. If you can make a basement dungeon sound good, then you're absolutely ready for the next thing, because that's hard. And once you mix in a larger PA, you'll know just how hard that was. But in the beginning, that will be all you know, and you'll be happy about it. So long story short, in a small venue, you're just trying to make the best of a bad situation. And my biggest tip for this place is ring out all your wedges and your monitors thoroughly. And also, if you can get that vocalist to just move that microphone one step back, you'll get a lot more gain before feedback than by using EQ alone. If you are currently mixing some shows, but you want to mix more shows, and you want to go full time as a freelance live sound engineer, then you should check out my Live Sound Career Accelerator. If you're watching this video near to when it's released, then I am taking the second intake of students in early November 2025. And from the start of October, I'm opening up my calendar massively to take calls and talk to you and find out if you're a good fit for this program. There's limited numbers, but if you want to apply, you can fill out the application form, which you'll find in the description down below. If you're successful, then we'll have a chat and you can talk about joining the course. Moving on, the next venue that you'll go into is, of course, a sort of medium or larger indoor venue, right? It's going to be anything from like 500 capacity, 1,000 capacity. I'm even counting stuff at like 2,000 capacity under this. It's usually some sort of concert hall that is built for music, as opposed to sort of arenas and things, which is just these big boxes, and we won't talk about that for now. What you're going to find in a medium-sized venue is a better PA of higher quality, which has been positioned and deployed more effectively. You're going to get a greater distance between the microphones on the stage and the PA, which is probably hung over there, which means that you get less PA sound in the microphone, which means that you get more gain before feedback. Even if the speakers are close to the microphone, the quality of the speakers and the directionality of the speakers often means that you still get more gain before feedback. In general, you're going to run across better equipment. The monitor wedges will be of a higher standard. The house mixer will be of a higher standard. The cables, the multi-cores, and the power connections that you have will be of a higher standard. There's probably going to be a system in place for managing everything. Gone are the times when you need to go hunting through the back of the bar to find the SM58s for the vocals because there happened to be karaoke on Wednesday. Now, you open up a drawer and find that there are 6 SM58s and each one is in its own slot, and you can always find it. If it's not there, you say to the technical manager, and guess what? It appears, or the problem is solved within a day or so. On top of this, you're going to be working with a higher quality of artists. Suddenly that vocalist isn't so shy up at the vocal mic, and you're getting much more gain into the microphone as well, so you don't need to fight as hard to get that vocal above the PA because you have a hotter signal going in. Same thing happens with the monitors. I'm not saying it never happens, but quite often people are a lot more accommodating with what they need to hear in their monitors. As well as that, nowadays in medium-sized venues, you're mostly running into in-ear monitors, so actually stage volume is really, really low. Across the board, everything is easier. Life is easier. Standards of production are generally higher, but it's not all roses because these venues sometimes have different things that you need to deal with. Sometimes they have long reverbs, like I have worked in a church before, which has been converted into a music venue, and though it had a beautifully deployed PA, the reverb times were quite difficult to contend with. Also, the standard is higher, so the threshold for you making mistakes is not quite the same. You can't really be sitting there going, oh, I wonder how to do this on this mixer. You end up with a guest mixer coming in to mix the headline artist, and if they're using your mixer, you need to know it inside out so that you can assist them. That's why you need to spend your time in the small venues developing your chops, because you need to be really good by the time you get to a medium-sized venue, and then you can get even better. So these two venues have one thing in common, which is that they are both indoors. That brings us on to our third type of venue that I want to cover, which is just generally outdoor venues, open air festivals, that sort of thing. These range from fairly small local festivals to huge festivals with big PAs and delay towers and all the stuff. And there's actually a lot of stuff that you need to know about to be able to mix a good show on one of these systems. You have a lot of the benefits that you have with indoor larger venues in that, like, you get decent gain before feedback, the production is usually quite professional when you're on a large outdoor stage, though not all the time, but there's a few critical things that change, and the big one is temperature. If you do a sound check during the day in the springtime and it's nice and warm, and then you go away to your hotel and you come back for your show at 11 p.m, the temperature has dropped by a significant amount, and guess what? The PA sounds completely different. You get way more top end when that temperature drops down. And you really need to anticipate that, because if you don't, suddenly you do have feedback in your vocal microphones. So be aware of that temperature change. Next up, you need to know that wind affects vocal intelligibility. When you start mixing your show, if a gust of wind comes along, it can blow away the vocals or just the high end of the mix in general. And you end up going, where did my mix go? And then you push things up and up, the wind falls down, and then suddenly you're being absolutely demolished by guitars and vocals and treble in general. This is also true of pyrotechnics. If you've got pyro on the front of the stage and suddenly there's a whole load of flames that shoot up, that creates the change in temperature that I was just talking about before. And so you might find that everything muffles and softens because the temperature at the front of the stage, in front of the PA, has just changed massively, and it changes your mix. So you have to anticipate that, because if you don't, you might be like, oh, shit, what's happening? Another thing that you need to be aware of in open air festivals is that the front of house is often in a tent. So you're mixing inside a tiny little plastic room, but the audience are not standing in a tiny little plastic room. So you need to constantly go out of that tent to hear what the audience is actually hearing. On top of that, sometimes the tent is raised quite high into the air. It can be as high as like 1 meter, or one festival I worked at, it was up on a hill. You might think, great, I get to see the stage really easily. I'm not looking at people with back of people's heads and stuff. But it's what happens is the lineary element that is actually directly hitting your ears in that front of house tent is actually intended to be hitting like 5 meters behind the tent, because you're raised up, so it's coming down at an angle, it hits you, but it's intended for back there, right? And the result is that like there's more high frequency energy hitting your ears in the tent than there is on the ground. So that's why it's also really, really important to get out of the tent and stand on the ground where people hear the music. Another thing that's really, really important to remember on festivals and big stages is that it's long. It's far from front of house to the stage. You really don't want to forget things on the stage, because if you go to the front of house tent to start the show and you realize that you left your iPad, for example, on the stage and you need it for the show, then like you're talking like it can take you several minutes to run from that tent, go through the fences and stuff, hop a barrier, get past security, get onto the stage, get your iPad, and then get back. So a really important skill on larger stages is just to be more organized, have checklists, go slower, and make sure that you are finished with each thing before you move on to the next thing. So that's all for that. Hopefully that was insightful. Remember, if you want to go full-time in live sound, check out the Live Sound Career Accelerator. in the description down below, and I'll leave a link up here about all the things that I learned from mixing a ton of festivals this summer. Until next time, goodbye.